Welcome, everyone. I'm excited for you to be here. I am just absolutely thrilled that we have Adam Carnow with us today. He's going to talk to us about the path from GIS analyst to GIS manager, I believe. I want to give you a few reminders. Please ask your questions in the Q&A. I will be monitoring that so that I can give them to Adam at the end of his presentation. We won't be answering questions until the very end, so please be patient with us. Any questions that are in the chat I may miss, so make sure you put them in the Q&A. We also have a survey off to the side, so make sure you take the survey after the session. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Adam. Adam, why don't you kick us off?
Great, thanks very much, Jenna, and thank you very much for the opportunity to support this great event in the community. I sure wish we could all be in person. Big fan of Arizona and would love to get back there and engage with a great GIS community. So let's sit back and get ready to talk about the path from GIS Manager to GIS Leader. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off because I'd like you guys to focus on the presentation rather than myself. So this is, I think, a really prudent conversation for any GIS community based on what's happening in our industry across the globe, really. And before I get into my message about the path from GIS Manager to GIS Leader, I do need to address the current situation that the globe is dealing with, and that is the pandemic. So while the global pandemic is one of the major challenges that humanity has ever had to face, there are actually some really big benefits to the GIS community. I want to talk about those. I mean, first of all, everything about this pandemic is spatial. And so we've been thrust into the spotlight because everybody affected by this tragedy is looking for help. And we're at the center of those that can provide the help and the answers. So now is our time to really shine. This is an amazing opportunity to be noticed and to advance people's knowledge and appreciation for what we do. And I'd like to really highlight about some work on how our GIS community has responded. I'm sure you recognize this dashboard. This is perhaps the most visible map in the world right now. It's the COVID-19 global map and dashboard from Johns Hopkins University. And it was created by a PhD student En Cheng Dong in about 8 hours. And once it was publicly released, it, pun intended, did go viral very quickly. And it now gets over 1 billion hits per day. That's right, billion with a B. That's almost 14,000 hits per second. And it's designed to handle over 2 billion hits per day. And it's received well over 1 trillion hits total overall. So I think the impact of this single application is a watershed moment for the GIS community. I think you could look at the history of GIS across the globe, and I think it's pre-COVID-19, and then there's going to be a new one post-COVID-19 because the visibility and understanding of what we can provide to the globe as far as spatial knowledge and awareness is really this awareness has really moved us forward, I think, decades as far as people being able to understand what we do. They've also released a United States dashboard that provides more detailed information at the county level. And just to show the level of people that are using this, this is a tweet back from February of 2020 from then acting Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. And he was a daily user of this dashboard, and there was a time where it was actually down because it was being updated. And he was tweeting about, is it down for everybody, is it just me? So the fact that you've got the leader of a major, very important U.S. federal agency using this app all the time just really shows the value that this thing is bringing to this pandemic. And then just to pile onto this, Time magazine at the end of last year put out their most influential people in the world, the most 100 influential people in the world. And Lauren Gardner, who runs the center at Johns Hopkins that produced that app, was labeled as one of the top 100 in the category of pioneers. And then at the end of 2020, also they released the best inventions of 2020, 100 innovations changing how we live. And again, they acknowledged the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. So this has just been, like I said, amazing breakthrough for our industry as far as the value we can provide to the globe. There's lots of other examples. The World Health Organization has a COVID dashboard. U.S. Census Bureau has one. This might be one that you may not have seen yet, but I would suggest you take a look at it. It's put out by us here at Esri, called the COVID Pulse. And it's interesting because it runs off the same numbers that Johns Hopkins app runs off of, but the Johns Hopkins app mostly focuses on what's happening right now. This one shows you trends over time. So it shows it at the state level, and then when you zoom in, you can actually see numbers at the county level. But the other thing it does is it actually identifies what stage of the pandemic each county is in. So stages or pandemics have 6 phases. They are emergent, spreading, epidemic, controlled, end state, and no cases. And so using that textbook definition, this app will show you exactly where each county is in each of these 6 phases, which I think is very important. So it's important to look at the trend over time and then see where the trend is headed and which phase we're in, because we're certainly all, anxiously looking forward to end stage and no cases. Also, across the United States, Esri identified over 380 apps that were deployed publicly to support the COVID-19 response, and another 336 across the globe. So that's over 700 apps that have been deployed. So kudos and a round of applause to the GIS community for all the hard work in doing very important work to support the globe's response to this incredible thing that we're dealing with. But one thing that I'd like to point out here is that all of these apps have certain things in common. And these things in common are very important to understand as we move forward. And let's learn from this so that when we deploy apps in the future, we can follow these guidelines. So number one is these apps are configurable, because when you're trying to quickly produce an app in the middle of a pandemic, there's not time for custom coding. So these are configurable, COTS, configurable off-the-shelf, COTS, and they can be released without any coding whatsoever. Number two, they're cloud-based, because if you put something out for the public like this, that's so important, it will go viral. And you've got to have the elasticity that the cloud provides you to adequately meet the demand. If not, your infrastructure will go down because of the overwhelming response and need to access the application and data. Number three, they're user-centric. They're accessible to anyone. They can work on any device. Number four, they're data-driven. They're designed to showcase the data with visualization and analytics. And they're simple. They're easy to use. Anybody can figure out how to use these without watching a video or reading a book or taking a class. So these five characteristics of these apps that we have seen deploy during the pandemic are what Esri has been talking about as the modern recipe for public accessible web GIS for a long time, for many, many years. And this pandemic has proven that this recipe is successful and can do what's needed to provide incredibly important information to the largest audience you can think of. So these are great things to think about as we move forward when we need to push applications out via the web to large audiences. We need to remember that although a lot of these apps are hub sites and are dashboards, there's a whole lot more that you can do with GIS to support the pandemic. So Esri has 15 solutions in our COVID-19 family of these configurable off-the-shelf apps. So if you work with people that are supporting a COVID response in any of these areas, please be sure to talk to them to see if they could use some of these apps in their work. And we've also got, in addition to those 15, we've got 2 that work on ArcGIS Pro for actual modeling to see where the trend might be going in the future. So be aware that it's more than just hubs and dashboards. And then we have to step back a little bit and look at the COVID-19 effects on our organizations and how GIS can help. So many organizations are dealing with reduced budgets due to the pandemic, which is leading them to look for cost savings. They've got to save money if they're going to have a lower budget. They're also looking to digitally transform your organization, because If you're dealing with a reduced budget and trying to save money, you're going to be cutting things. And so you've got to actually implement more technology in order to get the same amount of stuff done. So you'll see that even though budgets overall will go down, quite often you'll see an IT budget go up in times of this because they're needing to digitally transform their organization to be more efficient, et cetera. And because people are working remotely, your manual paper-based old workflows are not really viable anymore. So their organizations are having to replace those with digital workflows. And so it's very important that as executives in organizations are dealing with these things and they're turning to their managers and saying, help me figure out ways to save money, digitally transform, and get rid of paper, that those managers and others are replying with GIS as one of the options, because GIS can certainly do all of these things. So we need to make sure that we're part of the solution that they're looking at and evaluating. If not, raise your hand, step up, speak to whoever you need to, and let them know so that you can help. And this is what leaders do. So this presentation is about how to go from manager to leader. Leaders stand up in when times are bad, and they say, I'm going to help this organization emerge even better on the far side of this pandemic. And that's what leadership is all about. And so now is our time. We've got this spotlight on us. Let's stand up and be recognized and do all we can to help our organizations and community. Okay, so with that preamble out of the way, we can get back to our story about the path from manager to leader. And first, let's talk about why we need GIS leaders. And so I'm going to run through some examples of articles and quotes about why I believe we need more GIS leaders. And I'm going to start with this one. This one comes to us from 10 years ago. I ran into it about that time. And this one really opened my eyes. And it states that generally people outside of GIS think of GIS just as maps or graphic product of the younger brother of CAD. And so it was saying that that's what the attitude and image was 10 years ago. But I think for most of us, it's still this way 10 years later. Now, I'm not belittling maps. Maps are incredibly important, and map making is an amazing, very hard to acquire skill and be really good at, and they bring lots of value. But if you've got access to analytics and enterprise GIS, you should be doing a whole lot more than just making maps. So if we are viewed as simply map makers, we miss out on a whole lot of opportunity to provide a lot more value to our organizations and communities. So I think a big part of the problem is we've got to stand up in order to move from manager to leader and get everybody to realize the full potential and value we can provide our organization and communities beyond just the map. And so here's another quote. This one's from 6 years ago that says, GIS is often seen as maps or visual graphics product, and the more advanced capabilities are ignored because they remain unknown to key departments and decision makers. And again, I think this is still true in most places. So we've got to proactively get out there and advertise and market our services and value so that people will utilize our work and our specialties. The way I look at it is your colleagues want your help and need your help. They just don't know how you can help them. So we've really got to get over that. And then this one from 3 years ago, and this comes from a survey of CIOs and other executives about why what's the biggest challenge to not seeing the full return on investment from their GIS. And it was lack of awareness among users and policymakers. That was the number one answer. And in that same article was this great quote from the CEO of Here Technologies that said, the geospatial industry is still undervalued and underappreciated by the world at large. The onus is on us to collectively demonstrate how location data and tools can be applied to make dramatic improvements to society, from making every journey safer and our air cleaner to helping businesses operate more efficiently. That's a really great quote. So it's our fault that people think of us as simply map makers. And so it's our job to change that image and get out there so that we can actually help lead our organizations to be a lot more performant. Okay, so this next section is all about winning with location intelligence. So now that we know we need more leaders, let's see how we can lead by helping our organizations win with location intelligence. And I'm switching the conversation away from GIS and over to location intelligence. And the reason I'm making that shift in my verbiage is because I want to talk about capabilities. So a capability is the power, ability to do something. Most of your executives aren't very interested in technology. but they are very interested in capabilities, adding new capabilities, expanding capabilities, both capabilities for the organization as well as for the staff. So if we shift our conversation away from technology and GIS and start talking about location intelligence, which I believe is the best term for the capability that GIS can enable in an organization, then we will get their attention. If we get them to understand what location intelligence is and its value and potential, it's much easier to get them to buy into supporting our mission and giving us access to increased resources. So because we're doing this remotely and virtual, and I don't want to worry about, spooling this virtually across the web, just provide you the link, and you guys will get access to these slides, and they're all hyperlinked. But there's a great 2-minute video that Esri did with Fast Company about what is location intelligence, and it's meant to be shown to an executive. So it's a great tool to show. Again, it's just 2 minutes long to an executive, get them to understand what is location intelligence and appreciate the value that it brings. So from that, now that we've established that, let's shift the conversation to location intelligence. I now want to talk to you about a very important document that was produced a couple of years ago from Esri Canada, and it's called Winning with Location Intelligence, the Essential Practices. And it's best practices that they identified from surveying 200 organizations across Canada in all industries. These organizations were large, they had 500 or more employees. And they looked at how successful they were with location intelligence. And out of that work, they then distilled some best practices. And you can see this, the best practices are categorized by industry as well as in another way that I'll get to shortly. But what this aims to show you is that if you're going to implement technology like GIS, that requires a certain bucket of skills that you need to be good at to get that technology up and running the best way. That's one thing. But if you want to actually implement a new capability of location intelligence at an organization, it includes a whole lot more skill that has nothing to do with technology to really get the full capability up and running in the organization. And that's what I really want to focus on today. And so what this document does is it separates these best practices out into what they call the 5 pillars of location intelligence: strategy, organization, technology and data, culture, and literacy. So what this shows us is if you're really going to be successful with location intelligence in an organization, you cannot spend 100% of your time on technology and data. You've got to actively work in these other 4 areas. You've got to create skills and knowledge in these other 4 areas. And you got to spend time on them. If you don't, you won't see the full return on investment and potential that your capabilities have to offer the organization. And so I'd like to focus on these 5 patterns for 5 pillars for a good chunk of this presentation. And we're going to go through each one, and with each one is going to be associated one of these numbers. So I have these 5 numbers: 64, 76, 78, 84, and 84. And you'll see these numbers come up for each of the pillars. And I want you to be aware of what they show in relation to our GIS community. So the first pillar that we're going to talk about is strategy. So if you're going to be successful with GIS and location intelligence in your organization, you must have a strategy and a discussion. There is nothing that convinces me that you don't need a strategy. I mean, the importance of a strategy cannot be understated. In fact, in the September 2019 survey from McKinsey & Company, and how leaders in data and analytics have pulled ahead, they found that the creation of a strategy is the #1 challenge to and the reason for a company's success at data and analytics. So GIS and location intelligence is data and analytics. So what this is telling us is that if you are successful with data and analytics, the #1 reason why you are is because of your strategy. And if you're not successful, the #1 reason why you're not is because of the strategy. So you have got to have a strategy. When I talk about a strategy, I'm not talking about a strategic plan. I'm not talking about a big, thick document that you might pay a lot of money for that sits on the shelf and gets updated every 3 to 5 years. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a business strategy that talks about how you align your work with the work of the organization and how you run your shop every day. And so if you don't have a strategy and you're going to create one, you're going to need to take time and resources to do that. And you might get kickback from your supervisors on why are we wanting to spend time and money on a strategy. So I would direct you to this article that Matt Lewin of Esri Canada penned, which gives you 5 reasons about how you can help convince an executive for the need of a geospatial strategy so that they will support your work on creating it. So a really good article that will help you, again, sell this to an executive who need. But let's get to the first of our numbers. So over the space of about 2 years before the pandemic hit, I traveled across the country speaking at various events across the United States and including District of Columbia. And in that, I did a live survey during the presentation and collected data from over 800 GIS professionals. And that data is going to show me those 5 numbers. And the first of our 5 numbers is 64. So that research showed me that 64% of organizations that use GIS do not have and maintain a GIS strategic plan. This is a real problem. This is one of the biggest problems we have, because I've just shown you how important strategy is. If you don't have one, then you're already behind the 8 ball as far as trying to be effective and impactful in your organization. We've got to have a strategy. So when I'm talking about this geospatial strategy, what do I really mean? So as I mentioned, the geospatial strategy is a business-oriented plan that defines how an organization will use GIS to achieve its goals. So business-oriented, not technology-oriented. And an effective geospatial strategy connects your business needs with the right people, processes, and technology to help you overcome challenges and improve results. So it's all about how can I help the business run better? How can I help them overcome their challenges and reach their goals? That should be everything that you're focused on every day at work. So another way to look at this, I think this simplifies it a lot, is you start with the business goals. What are the goals that your organization is working on? You can find these normally in a strategic plan for the organization, in KPIs, key performance indicators, whatever method or model your organization uses. Somewhere there's a list of goals that organization is trying to reach. What you need to do is find the people that in your organization that are in charge of meeting those goals. And you talk to them and you say, hey, what are the challenges keeping you from meeting your goals? And you learn about their struggles and why they can't meet their goals. And once you do, you then come back and say, okay, well, based on our discussion and the challenges that you're seeing, I can help you mitigate those challenges and reach your goals by implementing some GIS solutions. And if you do that, ta-da, you get business value of GIS. So this is what the geospatial strategy is all about. It's about aligning your work to what the people at the top feel is most important. So you see the word that's common in all 4 of these circles is business. So it's all about the business. If you do this, I promise you, you will see an elevated interest in you and your group's work. You will get increased resources, and increased importance, and you will rise from manager to leader. And let me show you a real world example that I think is pretty extraordinary. So this happened in Bonneville County, Idaho, which is in the southeast part of Idaho. The county seat is Idaho Falls. They have a population of about 115,000. Back in 2015, they had a single GIS professional there at the county. And because they're susceptible to wildfires, she deployed some configurable off-the-shelf ArcGIS solutions to help support wildfire response. Now, this really revolutionized the way they respond to wildfires, because most of their way they did that before was all paper-based and manual. And that's what they'd always done in the past. Sure enough, not long after they implemented this technology, they unfortunately got hit with some wildfires. But as a result of this, the county provided a better emergency response experience to the end users than they ever had in the past. Now this, along with some other great high business value work they did, convinced management to let the county add 5 more full-time GIS professionals. So we all know how hard it is to get a brand new full-time employee approved by the powers that be. It's almost impossible. But here we're talking about a county of 115,000 people that added not 1, not 2, but 5 full-time GIS professionals after realizing the value that they provided in helping them mitigate challenges to one of their biggest goals, which was fighting wildfires. So if you produce the value, people will find the money needed to fund your operation and expand it, because they're directly experiencing the benefits of your work. That's what it's all about. So Esri has, through the decades of working with thousands of customers all across the globe in all industries, we've created or developed a best practice on how to develop and execute a geospatial strategy. And it consists of 4 steps. Number 1, understand. That's understanding the goals and understanding the challenges. Number 2 is plan. That's where we actually plan the GIS solutions that are going to help mitigate those challenges. And then we act by implementing those solutions. And then lastly, we revisit the goals and challenges because they're always changing, because things happen like wildfires and earthquakes and bomb cyclones and pandemics, etc. So we constantly are cycling through this over and over and always readjusting and realigning our work with the new goals and challenges the organization is dealing with. If you want to learn a little bit more about the geospatial strategy and how to get one going in your organization, you can check out this document. It's only a few pages long. You can get it at that URL. And then I would suggest you discuss it with your Esri account team and talk to them about creating a geospatial strategy for you and your organization. Okay, so now on to the second pillar, which is organization. Now, organization is a big, broad topic. So what I want to do is focus in on just one part of organization, and that is the second bullet under organization here, called governance framework. So I'd like to talk about governance and the importance of it. So when I talk about governance, I'm not talking about data governance. I'm talking about, or software governance. I'm talking about organizational governance. So how is GIS run in your organization? Is there a formal structure in place that says, this is how we make decisions regarding the business of geospatial in our organization? So do you have a steering committee? Who reports to who? How are decisions made and executed in the organization? How is the work aligned? Is there executive support, et cetera, et cetera? How do we get budget, et cetera? So having formal, applicable governance, organizational governance in place is a key part of being successful with location intelligence. And so back to my survey showed that 76% of organizations that use GIS do not have formal governance in place. And again, that's a huge problem. Strategy and governance are 2 of the most important reasons about why you're successful with location intelligence in your organization. So if you don't have those, you've got to put them in place. And so if you're looking for some resources on learning more about governance for GIS, I would direct you again to Matt Lewin of Esri Canada. He's published extensively on this. There's a video available as well. Again, you'll have access to these slides that are all hyperlinked to these resources. Okay, on to the third pillar, which is the one that we should be comfortable with, right? Technology and data. Again, a very large, broad category. So I want to focus on one part of that. And the part I want to focus on under technology and data is best practices. So best practices are critical, and it's really important that you are aware of what the best practices are and that you implement those best practices that are applicable to your organization. And the reason being is that best practices are called that for a reason. People have figured out the best way to run GIS in an organization and location intelligence in order to avoid major pitfalls. So you're learning from the work of others and you're following the recommendations of people that know what they're talking about. So too often I find people ignoring best practices because they think they know better about how to run GIS and location intelligence in their organization. And it's really not a good place to be. So you want to implement the best practices. I promise you your GIS will be more stable, more performant. You'll have fewer tech support calls, and you will be much more, as far as performing, you'll be much better off in your organization. So my research showed, unfortunately, that 78% of GIS practitioners have not read the Bible that Esri puts out about best practices with ArcGIS. It's called Architecting the ArcGIS System Best Practices document. And here's what that document looks like. You can get it at that URL. You need to be aware that this is a living document because the technology is changing. And as the technology changes, the best practices change. So this document is updated at a minimum of 3 times a year. So you need to make sure you're constantly upbeat on the latest version. And the latest version is from August of 2021. And this document goes over people, data, processes, and technology. It's not overly technical, but please go through this with your Esri account team, learn about the best practices that apply to you and your organization, and then implement those. And I promise you that the people above you, specifically your CIT directors, A lot of these best practices come from generic IT. They aren't GIS specific. And so they'll usually back you up on these and wonder why you haven't been following them all along. So please be sure to be aware of this and read this document and stay up to date on it. Okay, the next of the 5 pillars is culture. Again, a broad category. So I want to focus on one part of culture, which is change management. And when I'm talking about change management, I'm not talking about software change management. I'm talking about organizational change management. So we spend a lot of time getting our technology ready for the organization. We also need to get the organization ready for the technology, because you can roll out the best tech in the world, but if nobody uses it, then it's not delivering any value. So people by default are resistant to change and usually not very enthused about picking up a brand new piece of technology. And so it's really critical that we implement a change management program around GIS so that we get the technology adoption and people understand why we're implementing new technology, so they're more friendly to it and will pick it up and actually utilize it. And again, my research did not show a good number here, and it showed that 84% of organizations that use GIS do not have and maintain a change management plan. So a lot of organizations already have change management programs in place. So see if yours does, and if so, speak up and get involved with it. If not, then you can reach out to start to implement one on your own. And this is, the reason here for change management is that the biggest challenge of a successful GIS implementation is the people problem. It's not the technology. The technology is actually the easy part. So the solution to that is implementing a change management program. And the definition I'm pulling from one of the experts, ProSci in the industry, is that this is the discipline that guides how we prepare, equip, and support individuals to successfully adopt change in order to drive organizational success and outcomes. And their research shows that organizations that have change management programs experience, on average, a 6 times more effective technology adoption than those that don't. So it really, really will make a huge difference in technology adoption in your organization. And if you need some assistance, Esri does have a change management consulting practice. Again, you can reach out to your account team, find out more about how they can help you out. And Michael Green is a part of that team, and he and his team have done a lot of publishing online of various articles and videos, etc. So you can check those out, find out more information about change management. Okay, so now we're on to the 5th of the 5 pillars, and that is literacy. That is, again, a broad category. So I want to focus on one part of that, which is workforce development or training. And having a workforce development plan, which dictates based on the GIS users in your organization, what their roles and responsibilities are, and exactly how they use a GIS and how they need to utilize the capability of location intelligence. Based on that, it recommends a series of courses that they need to take to keep up to speed on the latest skills that they need to actually use the technology in the utmost way to accomplish their mission. So GIS technology is changing so fast, everybody that uses it should have at least some training every year. And I know that it's hard to get training budgeted. So if you have an actual workforce development plan specific to your organization that lays out the order of courses for each person based on their roles and responsibilities, you're much more likely to get that funded rather than just saying, hey, can I have some money for training? So again, my research did not show a good number here. 84% of organizations that use GIS do not have and maintain a workforce development plan. So it's critical that you have one. And if you're an Esri customer, you can reach out to your account team. You have access to a training consultant, and they will help you put together a workforce development plan at no cost to you so that you can put that in place. And also be aware that we have generic learning plans that you can go and access right away on our website that you can utilize without having to be customized for your organization. So for instance, let's say you're trying to migrate all of your ArcMap desktop users over to ArcGIS Pro. That's a standard generic series of courses that people need to take. And so you can go up there and find a learning plan for that and then implement that in your organization. So workforce development is really, really key for experiencing the ultimate potential and success of value of location intelligence GIS in your organization. Okay. So that is the end of the analysis of the 5 pillars of location intelligence, the state that our industry is in based on my research, and then some resources about how you can get up to speed on each of those pillars to really attack them and start to make a bigger change in your organization. But now let's get to my favorite part of the presentation, which is highlighting some examples from the GIS community of your peers that are actually becoming leaders. So this is a long path from manager to leader. It doesn't happen overnight, but you're not the first to do it. There's lots of people out there that you need to reach out to and get to know and learn directly from them. And part of this path includes, again, changing that image away from MapMaker. And we can do that a couple of ways. Number one, we can change our job titles, and we can change the department, the name of our department. So personally, I believe that if you're going to succeed with location intelligence, that you shouldn't use the term GIS in your job title in your department, because GIS is the tool that we use to enable the capability of location intelligence. It's not actually what we do. So you don't see a spreadsheet department in your organization, do you? Right? I mean, departments are named by the function that they provide. So here are some examples of organizations across the globe that have changed the titles of their managers and the titles of their departments to drop GIS to better explain what exactly they're providing to the organization. So I really like that rebrand as a way to break that image of MapMaker, because most people, when they hear GIS, think of maps. In fact, another part of this is changing our elevator pitch. I mean, when you meet somebody new and they ask you what you do, a lot of people just say, oh, I make maps, or it's like Google Maps, et cetera. And that's part of proliferating this inaccurate image. That's part of the problem. So we need to change that. And I changed mine years ago. And now when people ask me what I do for a living, I say I help people make better decisions with the power of location. And if you say that, it really will get them more interested into how you can help them make better decisions. So I think that a rebrand is a part of changing this image and providing more value to the organization, and again, becoming a leader. So the idea here, my vision, is that we can become executives. So if you look at each organization, no matter what they do, they have some sort of CEO or chief executive officer. But as technology was implemented and became more and more important to the organization, that CEO then designated a new executive position for someone in charge of technology. Let's say they're called a chief technology officer. This could be your IT director, your chief information officer, whatever you like. But as technology's role and implementation has expanded and become more complex and provided more value, they've created additional executive positions. So you're now seeing chief innovation officers. Sometimes you're seeing a chief data officer. Sometimes you're seeing a chief analytics officer. So I think if we can accurately portray the value of geospatial to an executive, why shouldn't there be a CGO or chief geospatial officer? I think that there could be, and there should be, and that we could then move up into that position and then be a part of the strategic direction of our organization and utilize location intelligence and GIS to the utmost. And here are some real world examples of people in your network, in our community, that have done this. So these are examples from all across the globe. You'll see CIOs, CTOs, CDOs, directors, et cetera. These are people that used to be GIS analysts and managers and have moved up into various ways in various organizations, again, across the globe. So reach out to these folks on LinkedIn, connect with them, learn from them directly. You know how friendly our community is. They're usually more than happy to help others understand how they made it happen and learn how to do it yourself and learn from them directly, because these people are the ones that are out there and have had paved the path ahead of you. So I'd like to highlight a few of them. One is Todd Shanley. He's the CIO at Cabarrus County, North Carolina. So I live in Charlotte. I'm talking to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina. He's just up the road from me. And Todd is a great story. He's been at the county for over 20 years, and he started as a GIS intern. And he is now CIO. And Cabarrus County is consistently ranks in the top 10 counties in the US as far as being innovative and effective with the implementation of technology. So he's a huge success, and he started out again as a GIS intern. Here's an example from the city of Johns Creek, Georgia. Nick O'Day is the chief data officer there, and he used to be the GIS manager. And Tracy McKee is the chief innovation officer for Charleston, South Carolina, and she used to be a GIS manager. So there's 3 additional examples. And then let's say you can't move up into one of these fancy positions, but there's other ways to show the organization understands the value and appreciates it more is if a reorg happens and now you report directly to an executive. If they move GIS to report directly to an executive, that shows that that executive understands the importance of it, wants to directly drive it and have access to it. And so here's 4 examples in the local government space where the GIS manager has been reorged to report directly to a high-level executive, and therefore provide more access to the value that they provide to the organization. So there's many different ways that you can go to make this happen. Okay, so time for the conclusion. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. It is all about the 5 pillars of location intelligence and the best practices surrounding them. Excuse me. We cannot spend 100% of our time in technology and data. You've got to gain some skills in these other 4 areas. You've got to dedicate time in these other 4 areas. You've got to follow the best practices that Esri Canada outlined in each of the 5 here. You've got to be proactive and get out there and step up like leaders do to help the organization emerge even better on the other side of things like this pandemic. So now is the time while they're aware of us and aware of the value we're providing to the organization to step forward and help implement location intelligence, not just the technology of GIS. The next thing is you need to get help. So all of the great examples of GIS superstars out there, they don't do it themselves. Nobody can do it all. All of them get help. And so get help from Esri and our Esri partners if you're an Esri user. On the Esri team side, know your account manager and your solution engineer. We have a stable of subject matter experts that can help you explain the power and potential value of GIS in your organization to anybody in any industry. We've got great services folks. I talked about you can have access to a training consultant to get you a workforce development plan at no cost. We've got change management folks. We've got award-winning tech support. You've got the opportunity to purchase 24/7 tech support if you provide round-the-clock services. Then we have an advantage program that ties all of these things together where you get a technical advisor and an annual work plan as well that will help you. We have wonderful partners. Those partners can earn specialties. So be aware that if you need help in a certain area, look for a partner that has earned the specialty in the right area. Also talk to your Esri team and help them, get them to help you pick the right partner. And then check out the ArcGIS Marketplace where our partners show off their solutions, etc. If you want a really good resource book on all of this business side of geospatial strategy for managers, look no further than this free ebook from Esri Canada from Matt Lewin. He's published a lot over the years and he's compiled all of that together into this book. So this book is really, really effective at helping you learn all these things in these other 4 pillars of location intelligence. Then if you work in local government or state government, actually for federal government as well, I would steer you to this website and companion book called Smarter Government. And it comes to us from Martin O'Malley, who's the former governor of Maryland and mayor of Baltimore, Maryland. He's one of the most adept at being able to explain the value of technology in running a local government organization. He used it expressly when he was mayor and governor and provided really amazing data as to the performance of government while he was using the technology. So it has lots of great best practices and examples. There's that companion book that would make a great present for an executive that you're trying to convince to support GIS, because it talks directly to the value an executive can understand. So really great tool in helping executives understand the value of GIS. This website does the same thing. It's called Data Smart City Solutions. It's part of the Harvard Kennedy School. They have an Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation, and it's full of examples and videos and podcasts of best practices and success stories of how people are using data and analytics to better perform in government agencies across the United States. So it's a really good, constant, updating library of examples and best practices that you can apply. And then if you'd like to revisit this message that I'm talking about, this path from GIS Manager to Leader, I've also published this as a series of free articles in LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and go to my profile, you should be able to find part 1. And it the end of part 1 is a link to part 2, and then a link to part 3 as well. So all of it's there with all of the full hyperlinks, etc. So if you want to consume it that way, rather than looking at PowerPoint slides or a video, you can get it there as well. Then another thing I'd like to do is introduce you to some key people that do a lot of thinking and writing about this leadership, GIS leadership subject. And they are Nathan Hazelwood, Matt Lewin, and Paul Sinot. They are all part of the Esri community, but that's not why I highlight them. I really think they're doing the best work in this area. So Nathan is in New Zealand, Matt is in Canada, and Paul is in Ireland. So definitely check these folks, connect with them on social media, LinkedIn and Twitter. Follow them and read their content. It's really, really insightful. And they've got great things to offer to the community and help us all be better leaders. So it's time to seize these opportunities that are in front of you. There's lots of ways that your colleagues need your help, your organizations and communities need your help. You've got the technology and the data and the know-how and how to make it happen. You just got to stand up and be recognized and convince some folks to let you do it. So let's change the image out there. Let's provide more value. Let's help our organizations and communities improve. And let's go from just being managers to leaders. And the last couple of thoughts here are: there's a difference between having a job and building a career. Think about which one you want to do. If you just want to do your job for however many years and then retire, that's fine. But if you want to build a career, people build a career by moving from manager to leader and doing some of the things I've talked about in this presentation. So if that's what you want to do, that's what you need to do, and you need to start on it as soon as possible. And then think about when you're gone from this job, how will you be remembered? How will people talk about you once you're gone? Will they talk about the incredible influence you had and how you helped change the organization, the community for the better, and how you helped lead it and become a leader, and the growth that you, personal growth that you had? I think that's important. At least I personally do. And I think if you want to do that, again, following some of the things in this presentation and some of these resources will help you do that. And last thought here is that when it comes down to it, our job as GIS professionals is to be agents of change, to digitally transform our organization, to enable it with location intelligence so that it can better reach its goals and make a bigger difference in the community. And I don't want this to just be another presentation you listen to. I want this to be a new mission for you and to provide you some resources and help in order to accomplish it. I want this to change the way you're doing work at work, to provide more value and get more personal satisfaction and more professional career development. So if there's any way I can help in any way at all, please reach out to me. You can email me. I'm active on the Esri community on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with users. I love to help them any way I can. If you've got a success story, tell it to me and I can help tell it to the world. So this is a great community, and we all should be reaching out to each other and helping each other up, and because there's a lot of work to be done and we've got a lot of value to provide. So with that, I will go ahead and stop the presentation. But go ahead and start my video again, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Adam. That was amazing and a lot to think about. We did have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and one of them I think you answered, as I think it was asked early on in your presentation, but we'll go over it anyway. It is more of a statement. This person says, I would love to hear some examples of how GIS can be used for digital transformation. So listening to your whole presentation, I think that was what it was all about. You got all kinds of examples, but if you want to offer any more, I'm sure the folks would love to hear that.
Well, that great one from Bonneville County, Idaho. I mean, they were doing paper, manual-based workflows in response to wildfires. She deployed some apps that digitized that whole process and digitally transformed the way they do business. They put their pens and paper down, and they picked up their devices, and their response was revolutionary. And because of that and other work that she did that was so focused in providing value, she got the additional staff approved. So that right there is an example of digital transformation. Anytime you can get people to put pen and paper down and pick up devices, that's digital transformation.
And that's amazing. It's really, it's impressive and inspiring. So
there's lots of opportunity to do it. Every organization uses paper and pen today. I mean, every organization in one way or another. So just go find those and then figure out a way to digitize it, and boom, guess what? You're digitally transforming your organization.
There you go.
I don't know about you, but I mean, as a taxpayer, do you want your city or county that you pay taxes to using pen and paper? Not really.
No.
Not if they have access to the tools and technology that's available today. They shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would agree. We want efficiencies, right? I like it better. I like my job better if I feel more efficient. It's a big deal. Yeah, that's excellent. So Sarah Thompson asked, how do you recommend balancing implementing these pillars with workload for those in an understaffed situation, i.e. the lone GIS professional in Idaho?
Right, so that's the $1 million question there, right? I mean, if I could say something pithy right here in a couple of sentences to fix that, then I'd be a miracle worker, right? So you've got to start small and just work from there, right? So what happened in Bonneville County didn't happen overnight, right? What the GIS manager did there was she found what she thought was the biggest problem they were facing, which was the wildfire response. And she worked on it, deploying solutions, right? And she got Esri's help. Again, I talk about, you've got to get help, right? And even if you can't afford to hire us or a partner, your account team will help you as much as they can. And you start off slow with little something somewhere. So go talk to an executive. And I know talking to an executive can be sometimes, you know, stressful, but they're just people. And if you go there with the attitude that you're trying to help them do their job better, then they should really want to talk to you, because they all want help. And just ask them, say, what's your biggest pain in the butt right now that you're dealing with? Or what's your vision for what you really want to do? Whatever that is, take that in and then come back with some sort of GIS solution that helps either reduce their pain or get them closer to their vision. And if you implement that, again, you get an executive to directly experience personally the benefit of GIS. They will want more of it, and they will be happy to invest resources into it. So it's all about affecting the people that have control of the resources. So I know everybody's understaffed, and I know everybody's overworked, but if you're not talking to executives and changing the way that they feel about GIS, none of that's going to change. Okay, it changed in Bonneville County because she attacked a big problem they had and did a great job at it. And so they started throwing money at her to improve her staff, right? I've seen examples happen everywhere, from tiny little towns up to big, huge ones. So it doesn't matter. That's what it's directly all about. Go find somebody you're connected to that's friendly to you or friendly with technology or GIS, and just start to convince them.
That's great advice. And probably something that we need to hear repeatedly, right? So we can remember they're just people. And
the most successful GIS managers that I know are never in their office. They're always out meeting with executives, learning their business, learning how they can help them do their business better. And those that do that, the work just steamrolls. I mean, it just comes in faster than they ever thought of. And if it's core work that's, again, attacking the goals of the organization, they will throw major resources behind it, and you'll be able to actually do the work.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's important to remember.
Yep.
We do have one more question in the chat. This is from Mark Cristiano. I belong to a large organization. It's U.S. Forest Service. So I'm a small fish in a large pond. How do I bring these pillars to my organization? Do you have some examples?
It's the same thing, really. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're big or small. I mean, yeah, a bigger pond and being a small fish just means there's more people to talk to, right? So talk to the people that you're already doing the most work for. And if they don't have any real opportunities, or they're not the most connected person, get them to introduce you to someone that is. So one of the people that's best at this is David Moss. He was the GIS manager at Maricopa County, Arizona. A lot of you probably know David. I mean, David's way to prioritize his work was to look at the budget for Maricopa County. And what drove David was he wanted the biggest budget that he could get at the county. So he looked at who has the most money at the county. That's my #1 person I'm going to get to know. David got to know them, took them out to lunch, paid for their lunch. So they liked working with David. David provided them things that helped them meet their challenge or mitigate their challenges and meet their goals. And then the money just started rolling in and he was able to expand on that. So just talk to the people that are friendly to you, that know you, get them to introduce you to executives. Again, go with the attitude that you're here to help, that you want to learn what's bothering them and how you can help them be more effective. And just start there. And again, get help from your Esri account team. I've been brought in many times at customer accounts to talk to executives, to get them to understand the value, because sometimes they'll hear it from a GIS manager for 10 years and it just doesn't sink in. But I can come in, or somebody externally can come in, and in 30 minutes, they're all wound up about GIS. And I know it's very frustrating for the GIS manager. I've been telling them that for 10 years. I go, I know. Sometimes they just need to hear it from somebody else, or need to hear a story about another county or another organization just like them. But we can do it, and that's probably one of the most important things you need to do.
That's excellent advice. And I think it's practical advice. It's something that can be implemented. We can think about that and do something about it. And I think that's really important, that actionable piece to understand. So I really, really appreciate your time, Adam. I think this has been incredibly valuable for all of us.
It's not rocket science. You just got to get out there and do it. It's just different from having your head in the data. You got to have your head in the business and focus on that, and the rest will just come, I promise.
That's awesome and great advice. Thank you very much. I think we're at the very end. So okay. I appreciate you coming, and I want to remind everybody in our session to please take the survey. And next up is the networking lunch. So, and it's a lounge, it's casual, go and meet your fellow attendees. Thanks very much for attending.